Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forgotten Generation podcast, hosted by Troy Njenje Mbanga. This podcast is about amplifying young people's voices and the journeys they're on. Joining me in today's episode is a mental health campaigner and activist, and Stefano. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stefano Di Rico. I'm a mental health campaigner. I did a bit of youth voice work as well, and I'm also a university student. I try my best to. We just talk about stuff as much as we can, but yeah, mostly mental health and youth voice and seeing what that can be done at a sort of wider scale now at the health based and wider sectors through well-being of young people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode. So the first question is, and what is your youth social action
So
journey?
my youth social action journey, I'd say the journey itself, it started off with Young Minds, which is the leading charity for mental health in young people in the UK. That was after a bit of time that I sort of knew that there was an issue in the world, which was ill mental health. I decided to try my best to change this. I spoke to some people at school, and then I sort of ended up just deciding I was on the Young Minds mailing list, and I got an email about the Activist program there. Really exciting, and really long program which I signed up for, wrote an application, and I was fortunate enough to join. Then from there, I've been involved in a few different things. I think you'll understand it's you join one of these organizations and then you sort of end up in this whole world. You find out the whole world which exists, and I've had some fantastic opportunities. So I've been on the My Life My Say squad leadership program, and I've also dipped my toe into the startup world as well. So for about 2 years, I was involved with Body Health, which I was there as a freelancer, sort of founders associate, fraction founder associate, working in, again, trying to make a better world for families, which was I had a really good time. I got to learn a lot of skills. So yeah, I think my thing has always been mental health, but I'm trying to branch out a bit now and seeing what else there is. For example, I love doing a lot of work in supporting campaigners, very similar to what this podcast is all about. And it's how can you actually support campaigners to become campaigners firstly, and then there are a lot of things in our lives which are very odd, I think, as campaigners, which aren't too normal, which you may think that they're small things. I always give a really simple example, but it sort of boils down to this, which is we get on very early trains and very late trains at godforsaken hours of the day, um, to go to events, to speak at, to learn, to meet new people, get paid very little, to be honest. I think that's fact. If we do get paid, or if the travel reimbursement, sometimes there isn't even that, to spread a message and to support causes which we believe in. And yes, there is upside for us. Yes, we do get to meet a lot of people. Yes, we do love it. It's why we do it. And there's normally deeper reasons, deeper motivations, personal to each one, to each individual, as to why we do it. But I think there's something which we forget is that there is this wider picture. And I think that if we want this sector to continue in a positive way, there needs to be some campaigning for the campaigning sector. And that's something which I want to focus a bit more on. So.
Absolutely. Like what you said about connecting in different things. Because you're absolutely such a brilliant mental health campaigner and you do so much. And because I see you in so many different areas and so much different and boxes, shall we say. And I think it's so important that you're prioritizing so much other things as well. And still doing the amazing work you're doing, but also branching out and doing like and different things that can really like and inspire change. And so what makes you inspired to have a voice and be who you are and today?
So my own personal journey with all mental health, mental illness was when I was about 7. It was 7, yeah. It was year 2. I was in school, and I just started being really anxious, really, really anxious. I think now I was very close to being what we call now a school avoider. So emotional based school avoiding, which fortunately I didn't get to that point. I now know that I likely had OCD. I was fortunate enough to get the independent support for anxiety, but yeah, now I know that's POCD. But my campaigning journey really began when I was about 15, and there were 2 stories which really pushed me. One was when I looked down at my hands, count how many of my friends had come to me for support. It was more than I could count on 2 hands, and that's when I really knew that that was a systemic issue. But then there was also a story of a good friend of mine who I actually had fallen out of touch with, just now being friends, so I think at that age. But yeah, we've been really close, and during the pandemic, that I saw that she was in hospital, and I knew that she'd been struggling with mental health, and I was supporting her as much as I could, just sending support messages, offering to support in any way, whatever it was, but very loose support. And I think just seeing that image of she posted an image of her in the hospital, and she's now recovered, she's doing great, and only recently we reconnected actually. But it's all these things which are really, really difficult themes, I think, to talk about. And I realized that something had to be done. I realized it was systemic, as I mentioned earlier. We need to do something to have change. So I was very fortunate enough to be on the campaigning group with Young Minds again for End the Wait, as well as Missing the Mark. Missing the Mark was an exam-based campaign around exam reform, and then End the Wait, just at the start of my Young Minds journey, was for mental health support. And one of my proudest achievements has been a government commitment to early mental health support teams in schools. A full pledge of that for a rollout of the mental health support teams in school by the 2025 year. Whether or not that will happen or not is up for debate, and I really do hope it does, because these are incredibly powerful teams. I think if you think about it, if every child up and down the country at their school has a team of individuals who are dedicated to their well-being, I think that would be incredible. And if we really have a whole school approach with mental health and mental well-being, that would be hugely beneficial to millions of lives. And that's what we have to look at. And that's the stuff which I want to change, a systemic change.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's so inspiring on what you said about your friend. How they kind of helped you, didn't they? And be inspired in the work that you do. And I think it's just so moving on what you said. And yeah, I think you've come a long way in who you are today and how you've managed to campaign a lot and do so much stuff there. I think is so empowering. What has been the barriers in your journey that has been hard as a young person?
I think if we look at barriers, I've been quite fortunate. I recognise my privilege whenever I go into a room as much as I can. I think it's something which doesn't get done enough in this space. Some fantastic campaigners come from a lot of privilege, which is great, but I do question what has caused that, and I include myself in that. And I want to do some work around looking into what makes a campaigner. But I always think that whilst getting as many voices into a room as possible is really important, we do, in certain cases, have to send people who can articulate but have that lived experience. So I think I've been very fortunate in some cases to have that, but at the same time I've turned a lot of opportunities down because I know I'm not the right person to be in that room because I don't have that lived experience. So I think less so my case, but more sector-wide, it's sometimes, are we sending the person with the lived experience to do that thing? And if so, are we doing everything in our power as an organisation to make sure that that young person or that person, the individual, articulates themselves in a way which will, at the end of the day, shape hearts and minds? Because that's what we need to do in this work. Every conversation which we have has the power to change lives of millions and millions of people, because those are, thankfully, we're now at the point where young people are being listened to some extent. Not to all extent, but to some. And that really does show that every single conversation does mean something when we go into rooms which are levels above what we were able to get into 10 years ago. We do need to be very careful in how we make sure that lived experience is at the heart of those conversations. And then the step above that is supporting that young person in making sure that they are supported to say the right things at the right time and to be on message and to be part of that campaign. And that comes from the very start then. We can't just, the young people involved in campaigns can't just be an adult for that reason. The way that we do this, and the way that I'm very grateful in the last piece of work that I did with Young Mind, was Missing the Mark campaign, which was a campaign shaped by young people from the start. And that is so powerful because then we know the messaging because we helped shape it. So it's not just, oh, can the young people come along for this event in Parliament on this day? Because whilst that's great that young people are being given a voice and being given a place to speak and to speak their mind with that lived experience, there's a risk of them being off message. And when we are talking about millions of lives being on the line, we can't risk being off message, in my opinion. We need to have making sure that they are part of the campaign strategy. That it's actually a campaign that young people want. Do they want exam reform? Is it for mental health? Not just because we don't like exams or snowflakes or whatever insert phrase you want to use about gender. No, it's because we know that There's stuff which says that, for example, improving democracy by having voting at 16. Uh, There's there's studies which show that, plenty of studies. But we have to make sure that young people are at the heart of the campaign throughout. So then they firstly believe in it or don't know if they can share their views in the campaign. But secondly, then they can go on and actually talk about it to the media, to the decision makers. And that's how we actually bridge it. So I think it's more of a sector-wide frustration I have, but I think it's something which the sector is getting a lot better at, and I think that's exactly the direction that we need to be going.
Exactly. I agree with you on that one and how much of things is slowly changing, but things need to change right now. There's so much issues, especially with mental health, other issues that young people are facing. And there's a lot of professionals out there who just don't get it, who don't understand our needs as young people. I mean, mental health is a big issue for young people. It's a crisis. And that's still going on at this day. But it's just slowly getting kind of like talked about, but it's not getting action as much. And I'm so glad you did a lot of work on that, even more about it, because I think it's so important that young people are at the heart in what young people are going through.
Exactly. It's about making sure that they're actually able to use their voice and to have, as I said, lived experience needs to be at the heart of all of these conversations. We cannot simply just let people on unless they who don't have that lived experience, because we won't get the change that we need. Because unfortunately enough, the reason that we're in those rooms, we're still not at the stage where they actually treat talented young people as consultants or or professional bodies, because sometimes change happens slowly. We know that. We're admitting that. But they have their voice. We need to make sure that they are using it the right way. And we need to make sure that that voice is valued and supported throughout.
Yes, I couldn't agree more on what you said. And that brings me to this next question is what would um like you do as a prime minister, but also like what are the three issues you think young people are facing right now?
I always say that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is the most hated job in the country, because you will never please anyone. I don't really. It's quite frustrating. The two-child benefit cap or themes like that, the triple lock, all of these significant fiscal policies are things, and social policies are things which you'll never please anyone. So it's let alone everyone. It's a job which I don't envy, and I think in this space we always get told when we be prime minister. It's always a very frustrating question to be asked, but I always do say I think I say, oh God, no, I think it's take the world. But I think the three things to which would actually make a change in young people's lives. So I think it's the mental health emergency. We're in emergency now, and it's because of systemic failings. So whether that be when you go and access support, but also before that, we've closed a load of youth clubs over the past 20 years, and now we are starting to open them back up. But what are youth clubs are? They're called, they are community and a place to go after school, right? So if a kid, we can't keep on blaming phones, is my point. So if a kid wants to go home after school, they go home and they'll probably just be on their phone. If a kid has a place to go to after school, whether that be an arts and craft place, whether that be a music club, whether that be a leadership program, whatever it may be, a sports club, that is an opportunity for that kid to understand I am valued, right? And I have something which I can be proud of for myself. So youth clubs is incredibly important, and that can then help solve the mental health emergency that we live in. Then I think it's twofold in the cost of living, because it's very easy to just say cost of living and not actually give any specifics. And I think that's a problem. But I think when we look at it really, it's travel. Travel cost is incredibly high in the UK, and it doesn't need to be. Um, I don't particularly have an answer for it. I always say I can hardly count. I'm not an economist, but I really think that if you look at Europe and you look at any other place, or travel's a lot lower. And travel, I was in a seminar yesterday at uni, and I have a fantastic lecturer, Mark Bacon, who works in policy, and I don't want to quote him exactly. Travel should not be for profit. Travel is always going to be an investment, which then comes back in through taxes, because people are traveling to then create growth. As I said, I'm not an economist, but travel is such a key thing. And if you look at other countries across Europe, they are making travel incredibly cheaper. And ours, yes, it's been frozen, but is that really going to make an incredible change? it's still incredibly expensive. You can have train tickets in this country which cost thousands of pounds, or over £1,000. You can book a holiday to New York with that money. You can go speak to the UN with that money. Like, it's incredibly dangerous. And I think the next thing, which also travel leads to community. Travel can take you places, can take you to communities which help you and which can bring you into jobs. It can bring you anything. So travel is so important. So trains, public services, rural buses, all of these things are investments we need to consider in the cost of living crisis. So we want to tackle them specifically. And then the second one for me is incredibly important. I think Troy and I, we both have a lot of friends who work in the organisation, who are involved in the organisation Fight Back, and they are doing some fantastic work. And in this country, we still have food deserts. That means access to healthy food, I believe, in 20 minutes is not a reasonable price. That is incredibly upsetting. We have an obesity crisis going on at the moment in young people. Obesity rates are incredibly high. And so far, the government has used either the wrong ways or watered down policy. So the food campaign has had some great wins recently, but they are still watered down, and we need to say how it is. I think it's a big age-old saying, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. So we need to really look at ourselves and say, are we making something which will actually create change? So I think it's supporting all the individuals which do these sorts of campaigns. So in food, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? About which campaigners are we putting into rooms. If we're putting food campaigners in this place, then they are the best to go and speak about food. I always joke that we are all food campaigners when we work in this space, because food connects to everything. Food connects to war. Food connects to cost of living. Food connects to obesity, to health, to mental health, the gut, brain, the microbiome, and the connection with the brain. All of that relates. Everything relates back to food. So we need to consider, are we sending the right food campaigners into those rooms? And so far we are. And I really want to pay tribute to those amazing individuals who have made that change and are shaping the narrative for future generations. It's unacceptable that when you go into a high street, you see so many fast food advertisements, but also chicken shops everywhere. All of this sort of stuff is incredibly unhealthy for young people, and it's really going to damage the population, and it's not setting up for brighter futures.
There's just so much going on in that issue. And I think, and government and professionals, a lot of work to do on that one. And that brings me to that point of like, and what do you think they need to do better in supporting those three issues that you talked about?
How they can do better. I think I'm not a politician. That's what I want to preface. I'm not a politician. I'm not an economist. Yeah, for either of them. And whether or not I will ever be, I don't know yet, and I don't really want to know right now. If I'm being completely honest with you, Troy. I think though that if we're looking at those issues, we need to invest in them. And cabinet and government is always going to be about giving to a certain cause, which will mean that you can't give something else. And it depends what we want to prioritize. But so far, the current government has made some improvements with youth clubs. They have made some improvements, some could say, with food policy, same with travel. But at the end of the day, are they enough? I personally don't think so. And I don't know if the way that we're going is the right direction. And I think that we're looking at a very turbulent political sphere right now. We're recording this after another Conservative member elected just yesterday to reform. We're seeing the rise of populism on both sides, I say, which people are sharing their views, but is that good? It's always good that people are sharing their views, but they are supporting individuals who may have very extreme views. I think that we need to look at. All of these things are very concerning things for the social landscape right now. And we need to expand opportunities for individuals to have their voice heard at the centre of government. And I really hope that I don't really mind whoever's in power. I've always said I'm politically neutral. But my main thing is making sure that people's voices are heard. Young people, not young people, whoever it may be, the best in the room needs to be in that. And the best in the room should also have lived experience, as I said.
Absolutely. And I can't agree with you more. I just thank you for your insights and just and what you think young people's and voices are in these issues, and just how you said about youth clubs and food, but also just like the cost of living crisis, I think is so, so important, and it's something that young people are going through at the moment. So thank you so much for bringing that up and having your thoughts on that. And so what is one piece of advice to a young person when, like, when they're making a difference but don't know how to? Because a lot of young people will be, try and use social action, but they might not know how to do it.
So I think that my number one piece of advice would be find a cause that you're interested in. I actually want to give two pieces of advice. Find a cause that you're interested in, whether that be food, mental health, immigration, anything that it may be. And then you look at it in a couple of different ways. One is you write or you create content and you put it out there. Everyone can say content this, content that, content this, content that. But people want to know that you've got a view. So either you write it and you put it on your own post. You can try and ask if you can be a guest blogger on someone else's blog that you've been reading. And if you don't know what it is that you're passionate about yet, try different things. But think, what is important to me and what's important to the people around me? Is it homelessness? I'm really passionate about it. I met a young lady a couple months ago now, and she was asking me, how do I do different things? Like, I'm not sure what my next step is in life. And I was a bit shocked that she was coming to me, to be honest, but she did. And I said, firstly, you obviously have opinions. She was an opinionated person. She was really interested in homelessness. And I said, write about them and get them out and say that you're writing about them. Make sure you're telling people, I am interested in this. And then my second piece of advice, which you can do either or, but I do recommend you always do some sort of content because people want to know that you have an opinion. If you're comfortable in doing that publicly. My second piece of advice is find a cause, which is the same as the first thing, but look into 2 national charities and 3 or 4 local charities or organizations, youth clubs, whatever they may be, clubs, societies, whatever they are, and see what's on their website to support them. They'll always have like a volunteer, how to get involved section on their website. Whether it be working in a charity shop, that's one way of doing it. But if you're really interested in the policy stuff and sharing your voice, have a look at what sort of programs they may have, particularly for young people. Have a look at ways that you can write for their blog or their website, whatever it may be. Find a way to get involved. And then from there, your opportunities open up a lot quicker than people think. And you have to create, so to some extent, you have to create that love. So, I mean, a good friend of mine, Paddy Crump, I'm not sure, I think you know him, but I'm not sure if you had on the podcast yet. We were fortunate enough to have been invited to Downing Street, once for a hand-in and once for a reception on masculinity. Hand-in of a letter, sorry, which was part of the campaign we were working on. I think we'd both agree that a huge amount of luck was in that we got selected for both of those opportunities. Also, we've put a lot of work into that. And I think that young people listening should remember, especially the ones who campaign with certain issues, should remember that hard work they put into to be in that position. Remember the amount of times that they've written stuff about certain issues which they are passionate about, events which they've worked hard on to make sure that they are a success. They should be proud of those issues. And remember that there is hard work which goes in behind these things. And it's not just luck. Yes, we've created that luck for ourselves, I think is something which some people have very difficult situations, but I think a lot of people can do. I think it's about putting the extra, it doesn't take that long in terms of time to start. I think I wrote my first application for Young Minds in about half an hour in a library. I think that's just it, right? That you can start. And then you put what you get, you get out what you put in, right? It's always that same thing, which if you want to do this, you can. You really just have to dig for those opportunities, sadly. But it's so worthwhile.
Thank you for those advice. I think it's so important, and for those young people listening, I really hope they resonated on what you said. And also, today's podcast, it's called Now We're Really Talking. It's on Beaver Change Media Network. Go give that podcast a listen because it's really, really good, all about mental health. What would be a Forgotten Generation podcast quote to sum up your journey?
If it's to sum up my journey, I think I've put a lot of time into this, and I'm happy with the amount of time that I've put in. But I know that you can track a lot of things. You can track each opportunity almost. I did this, so that came next. And I've been very fortunate in some cases, as I just said, luck does play a factor. I've gotten involved as much as I could in a lot of things. But also community and time, I think, are the most important. I've been very fortunate with the number of people I've met doing this amazing thing, which I call work. But it's the opportunity of my lifetime to meet all these individuals. Sorry, meeting you, meeting some incredible people they're the best at what they do. I'll be honest. They are honestly, some of the people who I've met on this journey are the best at food, are the best at tech, are the best at immigration and or leadership. And that is something to be I'm so grateful to have met those people and call them my friends. So I think community is probably top. But I think my message for other people would be proud of yourself. I think everyone has something to be proud of, whether it be a difficult situation which you've shown resilience for, whether it be a friendship which you got through, which was a difficult friendship, or just being proud of waking up that day, if that's the most, or and brushing your teeth, or whatever it may be. Which, if you're going through a tough time, you have to look for small wins. So be proud of yourself, because that is such an important thing.
I love that, and a sense of community, and just be proud of yourself for who you are, because and you do such incredible things, and just don't give up on it, and just keep going. But it's going to be hurdles along the way, but it is going to be so rewarding at the end of it. So just look after yourself. I think that's important as well in what you do in your youth attraction, but also your volunteering and everything. I just thank you so much, and Steph, for coming on and really talking about your journey and really empowering others with your lived experiences.
Thank you, Troy. Everything you do with the generation is really, really powerful. Please keep it up, and it's been a pleasure to come on. I know it's taken us a long time to schedule this in, so I'm really glad.
It was absolutely worth it, so thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the podcast episode. This is a Beaver Change Media Network production. Please support the podcast by subscribing and rating the podcast. I'd love to hear what you like and what could be better for future episodes. If you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram and iwill.troy, and also on X, iwill_Troy. Tune in to next week's episode.